Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Juju Show, episode 49. And this time we have a cool new thing to show you guys. But first, introductions. David, have you been on before?
I have once or twice. Yeah.
All right.
So,
Yeah, well,
but
I guess
I'm
I do. We once in a while get the OpenStack sync up. So,
yeah.
uh, well, welcome back for another round. Although I will promise not to bug you about what's new in OpenStack this time.
Okay.
I'll bug you about something totally different.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
My evil plan. But first, we have community news. So it's been 4 weeks since the last one, I think, because I was away last week at a sprint, or was it? Yes, I skipped one because we were getting a release out. Do you know what release that was? The Juju 2.6 release. Then I went to a sprint. So we missed the show, but that means that you all have been enjoying Juju 2.6 for a little bit now. So if you haven't upgraded, new point release, new lots of updates. The big thing in here is some of the Kubernetes work that's gone into 2.6, as well as a lot of other bits of polish and improvements. Obviously, check out the release notes and find out what cool, interesting thing that you can find to use. Lots of stability and performance improvements. So if you're still running something not 2.6, get your upgrade engines going. It's time to go play. That means I was away last week because we were planning out what we're going to do in 2.7 for the 1910 cycle. So we have a lot of awesome stuff to talk on the roadmap here. Dave and I are going to be really good friends because a lot of the stuff we're doing is around network support and OpenStack. So we're going to actually work on getting spaces implemented on top of the OpenStack providers so that we can do multi-NIC awareness to your deployments on top of OpenStack. So that'll be kind of
fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're really excited about that feature.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm on the hook. Dun dun dun.
Yeah.
What other stuff changed while we were away? You all may notice, and some people actually really did, was that we've had some website adjustments. So jujucharms.com, long live jujucharms.com in one sense, but actually we've moved to a new, much shorter jazz.ai website where you can actually look at some of the marketing material as well as actually browse the charms and bundles in the store there. Now, the old site still exists for folks that are using Jazz, but there's more work going on. There's more shifting and kind of breaking things apart into their little component pieces where they make the most sense. But what's really fun is that this is on top of new infrastructure. I know the development team's been having a lot of fun. When we had the new version of the site, there were a couple of things that were busted, and they were all excited to go fix the bugs because they've got a new Kubernetes-based deployment with a CI/CD pipeline set up, so they could go from commit to new site in minutes instead of I think normally it was like a 2-day turnaround time from commit, do the release, QA the release, get it on a rollout, and update all the things. So it's really kind of cool and awesome to see how that's turned around and goes. So if you see anything odd, you hit any issues, I encourage everyone to jump on the thread in Discourse or file a bug or, raise hell in IRC so that we make sure that we get everything cleaned up because, there may be some dust during the construction, but so far it seems to have smoothed out after the initial push and going okay. So very cool stuff and seems to be pretty snappy and fun. So give that a try. Let us know what you think. And I was trying to get someone from the team to come on and talk about it because I know there's more stuff coming, but I don't know. I'd rather someone official talked about it rather than me speculating things I hear in dark back corners of Juju world. So maybe I'll get them on for a future thing, a future episode. Let's see. Next up, there's a couple of interesting conversations going on in Discourse I wanted to highlight. One of them was a new tutorial that came up, and I think this was from Tim McNamara on the Juju team. And the tutorial is actually disabling ping on your machines, basically turning off ICMP. But what I think it really is a really good walkthrough use case of leveraging Juju Run to script things against your machines in a way. So, it's not necessarily something that's always has to be charms all the time. So oftentimes you can use Juju Run to splat commands across your infrastructure in a nice controlled way. It's logged because it's a CLI command making an API call and everything, so it has some auditability to it. And it's a little bit cleaner than just, SSHing to a box and getting a shell and saying, here you go, do this. So if you've ever thought about playing with it, I encourage folks to kind of give it a look through, but don't get too hung up on what it's doing. Try to pay more attention to kind of the how it's doing what it's doing, because I think there's a lot more use cases for stuff like that in the Juju world. What do you think, David? How much do you play with Juju Run on your day-to-day stuff?
A fair amount, because we kind of straddle the DevOps divide, where we're kind of doing some ops work as well. So I generally am using Juju Run probably on a daily basis.
I would think so. As you guys are working on charms and stuff in particular, checking deployments and using Run to get at kind of not just read information, but you can also write some stuff too.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So that one's kind of fun. Next up was an interesting question that came out, which was a question about, can a subordinate charm read the open ports of the principal? And this is one that I feel like about once a year, someone's trying to do something and ask this question. So I figure I'd come out and reply and kind of explain it and see if it makes sense. People can challenge me if it doesn't. The main thing is that there's obviously use cases for, say you have something that's doing connection monitoring, or I don't know, actually, that needs to talk to something else. You have a subordinate that needs to talk to a primary on that machine and needs to know what port it's listening on or whatnot. And so folks will go, hey, it's a subordinate, it's on the same machine. Shouldn't it just be able to kind of read that information out? And the answer is no. And the reason it's no, even though it seems like, well, if it's a subordinate, it should just be able to know that, is that obviously the two charms have a dependency on each other in some fashion, right? They're related to each other, the subordinate's getting on that machine. And if it wants to know about the ports, instead of just giving that information from the model out, it's much more interesting for those charms to have a legitimate conversation about what it's listening on, what it's configured to be doing, and so on, because that way the charms can respond and respect changes across that, and it helps make sure that the charms are actually kind of, I don't know, self-aware in the sense of, if it's just a one-sided conversation where, as long as Juju tells me this thing, then you're not really working through what the dependencies actually are in both directions and making sure it's kind of respected, and relation mechanism already has a way to share information. So it feels like one of those, Juju could say it, but it doesn't feel like it's quite modeling the interaction and the behavior properly to be like, hey, let me just sneakily tell you about these kind of things over here in the corner. And so it's definitely intended that if charms are actually dependent in that fashion to where they need to care about that information, it's exposed in the relation, which means it gets written into the layers, which means that there's actually code and understanding both directions about it, that it's an actual established behavior, than kind of an assumption that goes off and works on stuff. Does that make sense?
I agree. Yeah, no, I think we often find gaps where we haven't put enough data on a relation, and we have to add things and react to that with future versions of charm. So definitely, part of the challenge of charm authoring is modeling the entire life cycle of the service, and that includes all the relation information you need.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think sometimes relations seem to get superficially tossed under the bucket of, oh, this is connected to that, meaning that they share an IP address in a port and can make requests back and forth. But that relationship is much more nuanced than that. There could be things that can't actually reach each other, but they're spreading some sort of information about each other.
Right.
And it goes through a controller, right? Like, so they're not actually talking to each other in any fashion. What's happening is one over here is telling the controller, hey, here's some data to pass around, and then the one over here goes, hey, when that data comes by, let me know about that data. And so while in the GUI it's drawn as a connecting line, and people often say that these things are connected or talking to each other, it's actually in reality a little bit more interesting than that.
Right.
And it's good to always kind of keep that in mind, that relations are much more much broader than just two things swapping HTTP or TCP/IP traffic to each other.
Right.
All right, so I just wanted to chat about that one. And then the last one I wanted to chat about is actually from Tom Barber here. He's been bugging Jeff, but what's been bugging him in a good way because he's trying to use the JavaScript libjuju library. And it looks like he's trying to play around with some sort of web UI using that library to put some stuff on top of Juju, which is really kind of cool and interesting. What's good is that he's pushing the folks that are working on that library to kind of go, hey, this isn't as easy to use from here as, that library is pulled from years of working on the Juju GUI, talking to the Juju APIs, which, to be frank, aren't exactly the most user-friendly, awesome APIs to work with, being kind of WebSocket communication, very asynchronous, types of things. Lots of structured, I guess Go's not quite as bad as some sort of XML SOAP, API kind of thing.
Yeah.
But coming from folks that do, really lightweight JavaScript stuff or lightweight Python library stuff, it's a bit heavy. So it takes a little bit of work there. But it's kind of fun to see. And I just want to make sure folks are aware that JavaScript library exists. It's definitely kind of a cool way to script up some tooling. And there's a couple different questions he's asked, from authenticating to getting changes sent across the wire and stuff. But it's kind of it's fun to see, and I encourage folks who are interested to go check it out and play with it, and find interesting ways of using the JavaScript library yourselves to do kind of cool scripting against Juju and your models, deployments, and everything. So kind of fun. Always good to see when the community folks start poking at stuff that's been kind of internal only for a while.
Yeah.
Finding all the rough edges.
Yes.
But that's the way it gets smoothed out for the next person.
Absolutely. It gets better and better.
Yeah. So just want to say thanks, Tom, for banging on it, and thanks, Jeff, for helping Tom out and giving us some good answers to stuff. So, and that is the gist of the community news that I thought was really interesting over the last couple of weeks. Let's see. Yeah, that's it. So let's talk about a main topic. David, you guys have kind of a cool tool that you all have been using with a really interesting name with a lot of Z's in it. So tell me about this Zazza thing. What is it? How would I use it? And why would I use it? Maybe not in that order.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, exactly. I'll actually jump off the segue of, you mentioned libjuju. So Python libjuju is the tool that we've kind of landed on to interact with the Juju API from a Python scripting. And the reason that we need that is that we are constantly trying to test and validate that our charms work. And one of the interesting things, the best things about Juju and charms is that it really is about the relationships. We've mentioned that already as well. And you can wind up with, even with a relatively simple bundle, very complex interactions. And so as a charm author, you not only want to know that your charm code works, but you want to know that it integrates, that it functionally works with everything it's related to as well. And we, the charm authors that have been around since PyJuju, we've been attempting to solve this functional test problem since the early days. It's always been a challenge, and we've gone through multiple iterations. And we've basically landed on libjuju as the base code. So that is the thing that we've all agreed, this is what we're all going to work on in the Python world, at least.
A good library, right? The foundation of every cool tool or every good tool is a library that handles all the hard work, right? Or at least a good chunk of the hard work.
That's right. And you mentioned, Juju's asynchronous nature. So we're using Python async in libjuju, and so you can be as asynchronous as you want. And so we have had a long string of tool sets and frameworks that we've gone through. I will not name them to protect the not so innocent, but recently, in the last couple of years, the OpenStack Charms team has focused on a tool called Zazza, and this is just a functional test framework for charms. It uses libjuju under the hood. I'll be completely honest with you. It does a lot of making asynchronous calls synchronous, which maybe we should get slapped on the wrists for. But it basically handles the life cycle of a functional test. So from deployment to configuring everything that needs to happen. In our case, that will be an OpenStack cloud, to testing, running validation tests.
So I just want to stop you early. So
Sure.
you guys are using this to do testing against the OpenStack charms, but this isn't
right.
an OpenStack specific tool, though, right?
That's exactly right. So our CI/CD Jenkins basically runs these tests, and we've just recently, literally in the last couple of months, taken steps to generalize Zazza so that the community can use this. So right now we have, and I'm going to show you some links here in just a moment, but right now we have Zazza as the core project, and then we have separately a separate repository as Zazza OpenStack tests. And the way we import that library is Zazza.OpenStack. And then we've got the charm tests under that module. And so what we foresee, what we're trying to encourage the community to do is Zazza.Kubernetes and Zazza. Windows, whatever your particular charm environment is, that you would write your own module that would plug into this. You'd have your own charm tests, and you'd be able to functionally test your charm test.
Now, is that because you're trying to test a working system? Like, you don't have tests with a single charm because you're trying to test how this charm interacts as part of a whole, right? So in a way, it's kind of almost like less of a charm test in the sense that it's like a model test in a way.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's a good point. And one of the goals that we have is to share code. So, for example, I'm going to give you an example of, I just recently did the Keystone SAML Melon subordinate charm to Keystone. And so I was able to leverage the existing Keystone tests. They already existed there. And I was able to validate that, hey, now I'm bringing Keystone SAML Melon into the picture. I'll have specific tests for SAML Melon, but I can also validate that I haven't broken Keystone using its existing tests. But you're very much right that it is kind of from a model perspective. And I tell you what, let's start looking at some actual repository code, and that will help to give us a framework here. In the discourse, let's see, did that do?
You shared your double monitor setup. Maybe we can focus down to a window or something.
Let's try not to do that. Let's do that. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. So in the discourse show notes, we have all the links that I'm going to talk about today. The primary module is the Zazza module. And if we drill down into this guy, the main piece is this charm lifecycle. And it's broken up into very easy to understand. Again, this we've got a collect to gather any bits that we need. We've got a deploy to actually do the deployment of a bundle. Configure will run Juju configure commands, that kind of thing. Anything that needs to happen to set up the environment, and then a test phase that's going to run. It's going to make a lot more sense. Let's move over. I'm going to switch right over to the Zazza OpenStack test to show these as an example. So in our Zazza, we have the OpenStack module, and in this configure and utilities area are lots of shared code bits. But the main thing I want to show you is this charm test directory. Here we have basically for most of our charms, and we're adding to them daily, the individual charm bits that we want to test. And just for the sake of example, we'll go into the Keystone one. And our setup bits will have the configuration part. So for example, when we do a Juju deploy of a bundle, a OpenStack bundle, what we wind up with is an unconfigured cloud. The cloud is there, the charms are interacting with each other, everything is ready to go, but nothing is configured yet. You've got no networks, you have no users, you have nothing. So that configure step, in this case for Keystone, we'll add a demo user. If we move down here, let's see if it does anything else. That doesn't do very much interesting things. Let's look at something else real quick. I know Octavia is pretty wild. Let's look at that. In the Octavia charm, we're going to create some certificates that the Octavia charm is going to use for the amphora images. Basically, the idea is everything you need to do to make it functional is in that configure step. And then you'll run into your tests. And the tests utilize the unit test framework. So these are set up like unit tests. You can see like this charm operation class is importing OpenStack base test. OpenStack base test imports the unit tests. And we are going to do various testing here. So in this case, an LBAS2 test that's going to create a load balancer.
So pause or zoom, that's one of the actions you guys have. So you guys
that's
are
exactly
testing
right.
Action interactions as well as just, testing the deployment, testing the configuration changes or whatnot. You guys can do a lot more on the model than that, huh?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So everything that one might want to do as an operator, from the deployment to adding relations to maybe adding and removing a unit, scale in, scale out, you want to run an action, all of those things you can throw in your testing, your validation step.
Is there anything in the model that you guys don't currently support, like that needs love?
I think we do identify occasionally gaps in the libjuju module that we don't quite have. I don't have an example off the top of my head, but I know that those exist. So we'll
I bet you I know one, because we got one on our roadmap for the next cycle is to add cross-model relation support to bundles and libjuju. So I'm going to guess you guys don't have Zazza cross-model relation testing.
That is correct. Yes. So that's a goal, and on our roadmap as well, to begin testing multiple models, and we'll have to grow that in Zazza as well. So yeah.
Well, that's cool, but that's a lot of other stuff though that you do have, so that's good.
Yeah. So what we were looking at before was from the Zazza side of things. So that's but I want to also look at the charm side. And here we're just looking at the Octavia charm as an example. We have this test.yaml, and this is the thing that Zazza reads to decide what it's going to do. Simple YAML layout. In our case, we have this line 7. We have a smoke test, which is just kind of the quick and easy bundle to just make sure things aren't terribly broken. And then we also have our gate bundle. So a full check will go through each of these bundles one at a time and validate that all of those work. We also have some dev bundles as we are bringing on things online, like Disco Stein is bleeding edge for us for both Ubuntu and OpenStack. And then, as I was mentioning earlier, we have these configure steps, and these are basically just pointers to the Zazza classes. And so this is going to run through, and this is also an example of sharing code. So the first two are obviously Octavia specific, but then we also run a glance setup. We're going to add an image to the OpenStack. We're going to set up some flavors. We're going to set up some keys. We're going to set up a network. So we're going to have a valid working OpenStack at the end of this. And then after all of that configuration is taking place, we're going to run those tests. We've got that Neutron Open vSwitch overlay test. We're going to full-blown create a VM on the OpenStack. We're going to test LBAS v2, and then some charm-specific things for Octavia. So it's pretty easy layout. There's some more details there. This target deploy status. When we do the deploy phase, we're going to wait for the statuses to be what we expect. And normally that is active. But in this case, we expect Octavia to show up blocked because we're going to need to run some post-deployment actions, which are part of this configure step. So we can tell it exactly what to expect and where to go. Okay, I want to just very, very quickly show you a very quick and dirty demo here. Let's see. And let's go ahead and share that guy. And let me make sure.
It'd be great. Is there
I think that's
a particular charm or case that's like a really lightweight, easy, like I just want to get started trying this out with my own charm or whatnot, like the shortcut, get your feet wet.
Exactly. And in the show notes, I have 2 blog posts from 2 of our OpenStack engineers, Liam Young and Chris McNaughton. And those two blog posts are really good for the Hello World example. I think Chris's is more specific for if you happen to have come up through the Amulet world, you have Amulet functional tests and you want to move to Zazza. Chris's blog post walks you through, here's kind of the straightforward way to move from Amulet to Zazza. And in fact, he uses the Ubuntu charm that's in the charm store as an example. So
nice. Okay, great.
Try to have you covered there for that concept here. And let's see, very quickly, I just want to show you, I have here the Keystone SAML, this environment that is up. If you look at Liam's blog post, you'll notice that he is running multiple Zazza tests simultaneously. And so the first thing you'll notice when I do this Juju models is that the Zazza test itself is not in focus. And we did that intentionally. So you can literally have like 10 Zazza tests running at the same time. And that was a design focus, particularly Liam was really felt that was
makes
important.
Sense. I mean, you're only limited by as much infrastructure as you have available to you.
Exactly.
But yeah, obviously these things can take a while. You're trying to be very thorough with stuff. You're actually dealing with real deployments of things. So, being stuck doing them one at a time is definitely not a boat that's going to get you to a green test result anywhere near as soon as possible.
It also really helps if you're a developer and you're trying to context switch from bug 1 to bug 2. It's like, you just have them up and running, and you're totally right. It's just how much infrastructure do you have? So very quickly, I just want to show you the test.yaml for the Keystone SAML. Sorry, there's too many L's in there. And how I got to this state, the first thing that will run everything is this func test. Let's see. Sorry, here, I'll just show you everything. Func test run suite, and we do a thing called, we do these two switches. So if we run that will go through the entire life cycle of the test. That will do.
So let me stop you. So where did func test come from? Is this something that Zazza is supporting?
This is Zazza. This is what Zazza gives you, right? This is the these are the executables that you get. Run Zazza. Yeah, exactly. So,
I see. I didn't make that connection right off the bat, but I see now.
Sorry. And again, in the blog post, we're going to get some good examples. In the README, there's some good examples, and in the charms themselves, you can see some good examples. But this func test run suite does the whole shebang, is what I'm trying to get across. It does the deploy, it does the configure, and it does the testing. But you can also do individual testing. So I already have my deployment up. Let's look at the exact model. So I'm going to grab the model name. So I already have done my deploy. So if I want to just run the configure test for this, or the configure bits for this, I just pass it the model name, and I can do just the configure. And so I already have my deployment up, and say I'm iterating through I've just made some small change to my charm, and I've done a Juju upgrade charm, and now I want to run my configure step again, right? Or my test step again. I can go ahead and just do that.
Make sure it's all set up to run.
Exactly. Yeah. Unfortunately, this part is super slow, so I don't know how exciting that'll be, but just wanted to show you those little bits there. Any questions that you might have, Rick?
Let me think hard. No, I think I've got some reading to do as far as the existing post. That's good. Maybe it'd be useful to pull those out from the notes here into their own kind of discourse thing on the charming section of the discourse site, just so that folks can more easily find and maybe grab those. I know I've done some of that, copying some stuff I used to have in a blog over to the discourse so that it's more searchable and more folks can run into it by accident or not.
Okay.
No, that seems really cool. I have to play with that for sure.
Yeah. And what we're really encouraging the community to do is to have for your particular set of charms to have Zazza dot your team, right, and have your charm code, your charm functional testing code there. And so
it's a little bit like that shared the shared layers kind of idea, right? Where
yeah,
you have kind of an idea that it can be used by others, like you noted in your own examples, right? Where you can
right.
grab a setup step from someone else's thing because you're interacting with it. There's definitely that kind of that layer sharing type feeling to the same idea.
Exactly, and you can foresee a future in which I want to test Kubernetes, but I'm going to do I'm deploying it onto OpenStack, and so I want to include
Keystone, right? The shared Keystone, using Keystone as an auth backend on a Kubernetes deployment, right? Where you may want to reuse the existing configure steps provided at the Keystone charm from OpenStack, but as part of your Kubernetes charm testing setup, right? It's
exactly
ready-made right there. Well, very cool. Well, obviously we will sing from the rooftops for folks to play with this. I have gotten some questions lately around folks like, what is the new, what's the latest in kind of, like you mentioned, charm testing? It's been through some evolutions over time. And so it'll be good to see what folks think. Try it out. Have you guys looked at it all around testing of Kubernetes charms? Like, what would it take to do something like this, testing against a Kubernetes backend? Is it just as long as libjuju supports it, you're good? Or is there any kind of understanding of the model types there at all?
Yeah. So again, the Zazza, the core bit is just using libjuju under the hood, and so absolutely, if you can do any libjuju command, you can use Zazza, and libjuju and Zazza are just consuming regular bundles, so just a YAML file bundle for the deployment phase. So again, if you have your Kubernetes bundle ready to go, you can just toss that into your tests bundles directory, point your test.yaml to what you want to configure in that bundle, and you're off to the races.
Awesome. Well, thanks for dropping by and giving us a rundown. And I can't wait to forward lots of questions over your way when people start banging on things. So as far as asking those questions or anything, any particular, is there an upstream place for a Zazza conversation? I know you guys tend to participate more in that OpenStack upstream area, but I know a lot of folks trying this will be more in the Juju area. Like, where should folks go to say hi and what's up?
Yeah. Since we effectively own it at the moment, Zazza, if you go to freenode pound OpenStack -charms, we'll all be in there. We can respond to that. The links to the repositories are in the show notes, and we have GitHub issues turned on, so you can create an issue if you have a problem. And definitely, we just encourage you to come ping us and ask questions.
Well, awesome. I'm sure they will. So with that, let's bring this Juju show to an end. Anything else you want to say before we go, David?
No, thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Until next time, don't have too much fun.